Thank you, Amy. And it's good to see you, Teresa, and everybody else. But some of my heroes are on here. I'm just going to bow out and let the guy, Muse, you had your birthday. You can come talk. My name's Chip, and I'm an alcoholic. My home group is Busters for Sobriety in the little fishing village of Destin, Florida. I have a sponsor by the name of Tim H. from Louisville, Kentucky. And my sobriety date's the 22nd of November, 1987. I have to think for a minute. But thank you for the FOTS group. Being in Toronto, my grand sponsor is Butch. You know, when Don Majors passed away, Tim went straight to Butch. So I'm like, man, I got Canadian connections now. Slide me into that international. We've already heard it said a couple times, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only, that's the biggie, only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. So I'm not an expert authority. I'm nothing else but a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, sharing my personal adventures before and after, not anybody else's. These are my adventures and I claim them. And so every one of us has had our own experiences and adventures in the 11th step. So this is merely my 35 minutes. And then I get to listen to yours. But thank God for cleaning up the past. We can thank God for that we can improve our conscious contact. We can thank God that we can amend our relationships with our fellow people. I sound like Ollie with gratitude, right? And but we can solve our relationships and put them back together again with men and women, alcoholic, Al-Anon, normal people. And this is all just about to improve in the 11th step. So we had been, I'd run through these 10 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and wondering where, I wanted the brass ring. More than that, I thought at one time that they ought to be able to give us wheat blow badges like Cub Scout badges, and we'd be able to pin them on ourselves so people could tell where we were at. They could tell I was rigorously an honest person because I had indeed done the 5th step. So I had a 5th step badge up here, and I know about God because I did a 3rd step, and I totally surrendered as the 1st step. I had to have badges for everything. I wanted all these flags running around so people would know that I was aggressively working the steps. And what was happening was I was changing. I realize it. Sometimes I go to different parts of the nation, like a bunch of you guys do, and there seems to be little or no mention of our AA literature and the power that literature carries and what's contained in our literature. And so I can often seem that some people they kind of want to stay outside the literature. And they always told me if you go to a strange town and you can't get a hold of Intergroup and you want to find an alcoholic, go to Barnes and Noble bookstore and look under the self-help section. There'll be 4 alcoholics trying to figure a way to do it without having to work the steps. Give me that Evelyn Wood speed reading course on it. And that's kind of like, I understand that because that's what I wanted. I wanted it right away. And, but I had a lot of times I didn't realize that when I get sent back to the basics, I kind of find the answers that I had easily just passed by before because I kept wanting that easier, softer way. This is not about establishing a conscious contact. Remember, this is my experience. And I thought I was supposed to establish something. And this is not about establishing it. The big book in the 12 and 12 said in really sneaky terms that I missed that we've already established it. This is about improvement. This is about improvement, right? So, and we agnostics, I got my little notes, my sticky notes. It says that on page 57, some of us grow into it more slowly, but he has come to all who has earnestly sought him. When we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us. That's the 2nd step, right? So on page 63, when we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things happened. We had a new employer. Being all powerful, he provided what we needed. I needed a lot. I was a needy guy, right? If we kept close to him and performed his work well. As we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or hereafter. We were reborn in the 3rd step. And I'm like, how's all this going to apply to me later on? Well, it talked about our fears falling from us, right? We begin to feel the nearness of the Creator. See, all this stuff has been established to the other steps. And now I'm about to get the big cookie, right? And that's what I was looking for. Our next step is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. We begin to sense the flow of the Spirit. To some extent, we have become God conscious. My sponsor said, don't pay any attention to that till I had more time. But it was established that I was moving forward to this spiritual experience. So how could we deny it, right? And this step is about improving the conscious contact, which the way that I read it was really the golden ring. If I read, in my experience, the 12th step, it says, it doesn't say having had a spiritual experience as a result of carrying the message to others and practicing these principles. It says having had a spiritual experience as a result of these steps, the 11 steps before. And now I'm going to take that and I'm going to apply it to my daily life. And the 11th step is where I improve that conscious contact, or the practicing, as my beautiful sponsor, Jerry Wills, always told me, practicing the presence of God in everything. All came to God. So prayer and meditation, I'm like, wait a minute, now I'm sober, I'm working these steps, I'm busy, I got a career, I'm busy going to work, I'm going to meetings, I'm helping other alcoholics, and nothing so much more ensures immunity against the first drink. Now, I don't have time. AA has made my life so busy, I just don't have time. So the biggie is that I think Bill wants us to do is just to start and to continue giving it a try. And then the book says, of course, we finally did experiment, and this talking about prayer and meditation. So of course, we finally did experiment, and when the unexpected results followed, we felt different. In fact, we knew different, and we were sold on meditation and prayer. That came out of the 12 and 12. Almost any experienced AA will tell you how his affairs have taken remarkable and unexpected turns for the better as he tried to improve his conscious contact with God. 12 and 12, page 104, 11th step. You can tell I love the AA literature. I just sometimes I hear the wildest stuff in meetings, but I have to remember that's the way I was. I was just a wild, busy guy, and I wanted quick answers. So how did I start? How did Chip start with this practicing the improvement through prayer and meditation after I had worked the first 10 steps? I started by listening to speaker tapes. A lot of you guys are from the 80s and before, and we always had those cassette tapes, and I was listening, and a lot of y'all know the names. I was listening to Chuck, I was listening to Frank Jones, I was listening to Cliff Roach, Norm Alpe, all the great heroes, Cease Corbin. I am just burning up these tapes, listening to him. Bob B, I got to be with Bob a couple weekends ago, and it's always been my hero. And I just burnt everything up by listening to cassette tapes, right? The music that soothed the savage beast. I listened to tapes on the way to work, which was a 30-minute drive, on the way back home from work, which was another 30-minute drive. I listened to speakers during the day with headsets on while I was working, and at night to fall asleep. I had one of those little Walkman with the foamy speakers on my ears, laying on the pillow at nighttime, and I had that little cassette player, and I would listen to the music of AA, where people were telling my story. I've always been a story guy. Even in church, they taught me about the carpenter man, and they called it parables, with the way that I was brought up. And so I always related everything to stories. It's like Amy said, don't read it to me, show it to me in your life. Tell me about a story, right? And so I had these little headphones on, and my wife was sitting there listening, and it would, whether it was a big book or a speaker tape, and all of a sudden I went to sleep and started snoring. You can bet she was not about to turn that cassette off for fear of waking me up. She just let it ride. And then when at 45 minutes, when that thing went click and that door opened up, she gently turned the tape around, put it back in, pushed it, and hit play. I just kept sleep. She loved it when I slept. And that's, my poor wife would sit there and listen to all. She learned a big book before I did. I was asleep and she was listening to it over and over and over again, right? So I had to sleep. My metabolism was so wound up. I was listening to Teresa and her busy, like a buzzsaw, right? And my metabolism was so high, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do much of anything. So in essence, speaker tapes were my first form of actual meditation, which was listening. And as page 77 of the 12 and 12 says, as the body can fail its purpose for lack of nourishment, so can the soul. So I was constantly trying to nourish my soul, going on and on. And I can remember I was telling the old timer, I can't meditate. My head is just like a committee. My darling neighbor Beth Hartley talked about the committee. They're having meetings while I'm sleeping. And he said, you can't meditate? I said, no, I can't sit still for any length of time at all. I can't. And so the magic of the elder statesman, Burl got sober in 66 at the Long Beach Under 30 and then Bellflower Big Book. He says, well, so you're telling me that you don't know how to meditate. What do you do on the way to work every day and on the way home? I said, well, I listen to this tape in the truck. He said, oh, okay, you listen to the tape. And when you go to a meeting at nighttime, what do you do? And I said, well, I sit there and I sit in my seat and I listen. He said, oh, well, how long do you listen for? I said, well, normally an hour. He said, so what are you doing while you're listening? I said, I'm sitting still in a chair. He said, are you speaking to somebody? I love old timers. They just kind of like wring it out of you, right? And I said, no, I'm just sitting there quietly listening. Like I'm getting aggravated now. And he said, well, sponsee, welcome to Meditation 101. That's how we start practicing. We get quiet, we start listening, we pay attention to what's being said, and then we can formulate our thoughts about it. He said, this is all about starting and then about practicing. So I'm like, cool. So I can claim I got a badge now. I've been meditating. I can put my 11-step badge on. In progress, a work in progress, right? So what I had to have was somebody that would redefine the definition of what I was already doing, because I didn't think I could do it. So I'm denying that I meditate, and I've been doing it all along, right? And he showed me all along where all this was, but I just couldn't recognize the answer. Thank God. Thank God for the old timers that had learned the music that they can soothe me with, and they can tell me the stories and lay out everything for me. So 11th step, I would get up in the morning, I'd say my prayers, I'd put on my Air Force uniform, I'd go into the truck, I'd put on the tape, listen for 30 minutes, drive to work on the way home, did the same thing, went back to my meeting, listened for another, and I knew that I was doing the deal with God and that I was meditating for hours during the day. No longer could I deny it. I am now practicing, right? And I would check that off my list. And at nighttime, my head would be spinning with the events of the day. So I started doing a written 10 step to get my mind focused. And how does that 10th step come in? Edged sword, right? It's a two-edged sword. So I had to think about what I was writing, which kept my mind completely focused. And then I was actually meditating, and then I had to physically write to keep my hands busy. So now I'm mentally and physically getting with God, right? And so, of course, I would go to the store and I would buy cyber cybernetics and the power of the subconscious mind, try to fool my sponsor and get overeducated. And he would just tell me, he said, everything that, Johnny always said it, the answers to all your problems in life lie within the blue covers of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, it ain't all there. And it is. I found it. It is for me, right? So what I had to think of was that the magic, it says, when awakening, we do this. Upon retiring at night, we do that. Throughout the day, we do this. I mean, it's basically just all written down. And I was blowing right past it, thinking I didn't have any directions in life. And so how do I continuously improve this thing called the conscious contact? So throughout the years of being sober, did I change up anything in my routine? Did I double down? Did I change it at year 10, 20, 30, 35? No. What happened to my video? Whoop, it went out. Hold on. Boom, I'm back. See, that's how God works. All we do is we hit a spiritual button and it pops right back up again. So how did I do my improvement stuff? The best way that I improved the entire aspect, I didn't double down or change anything. What I started doing was sponsoring people. The greatest exercise in the world that I ever found in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is sponsoring people and hanging out with my sponsor, right? So I got to work the steps with my sponsor. That's one thing, to have a sponsor, right? It's another thing to be a sponsor. But as Amy knows, I talk about it a lot because I love Tim to death. I just morphed right to him when Jerry passed away, right? One of the dying arts is that for people with a lot of time to be continuously sponsorable, which means that I'm accountable. I had my time with him on the phone yesterday. And then tomorrow night, I'm going to be on a Zoom meeting on a big book study with Tim and 25 or 30 other guys, right? But I had to establish this conscious contact. And I knew without a doubt, I had established it and that God was there. And I would go to him with my plea and he would listen to me and everything was great. It worked great as I was going along. And I was going through the days, the weeks, the months, the years, the decades, and everything was great. I went through a terrible divorce at 10 years sober. Guess what? God was at my side. We were homies, right? I was praying. I was meditating. I got through it with the help of the people in my home group. I went to a wonderful marriage with a boy meets girl on the AA campus. We dated for 2.5 years under sponsor guidance. It was a miracle. It was a Camelot marriage. It never was going to fail, right? God bulletproof. And I was praying and I was meditating. I went through that wonderful marriage, and long about year 24, we decided it wasn't going to work anymore. And so we ended up going through divorce. That was divorce number 3. But guess what? Me and God, we're homies. We went through it together. Not a problem whatsoever, right? But God was always there at my side. So in my experience, what happened? Honestly, after a period of time, I began to take this conscious contact thing for granted. This is just me. I wasn't trying to improve anything. I was just maintaining everything. Everything was great. Everything, finances, romances, circumstances, everything was great in my life. I had arrived and I was on cruise control and I didn't even realize it. So, as you know, some people call the last 3 steps the maintenance steps and other people call them the growth steps. I think you call it whatever you're working at. However you're doing it, that's what you call it. If you're living the steps 10, 11, and 12 and a method to grow, then that's one thing. But what I ended up doing and not realizing it was I ended up using the last 3 steps as maintenance steps. And then I got caught blindsided at 28 years sober. I mean, blindsided. I had my rafters completely shook up. So let me explain it this way. If I'm maintaining an automobile, it doesn't really mean I just go up there and fill up the gas tank and kick the tires. That's not maintenance, right? Maintenance is when I lift that hood, I take it to the mechanic, I check the oil, check the fluid levels, check the air pressure, do periodic maintenance, tune it up, rotate, balance, constant, conscious. I monitor everything. That's what's called to me maintenance. And maintenance is an action, and it's certainly more than filling up with gas and kicking the tires, right? But at 26 years sober, when Angie and I got married, and at 27 years sober, when we moved to the beach and changed home groups, and I called and I notified the man who had been my sponsor for those 27 years that I was going to change sponsors and change home group. Little did I know. If God would have forwarded the script to me, I would have backed out and stayed exactly where I was because I was ill prepared for what had happened. And my life was about to be thrown into a series of trials and low spots that I had never experienced before. I couldn't see it happening because I was now living in a dream at the beach with successful business. We just sold the business for an extraordinary amount of money, and Angie and I retired. We're traveling, we're cruising, not a cloud on the horizon. But at 28 years sober, I ended up with this catastrophic thing that I'd never dealt with before. And this has everything to do with the 11th step. You see, God had always got me through the other stuff, but now I was caught completely off guard. You see, the sale of the business crashed, and instantly we lost a huge sum of money, and I was struck with a multitude of quick emotions I wasn't ready for. I'd worked my way through resentments against people and institutions. I worked my way through resentments against people in AA and Al-Anon. I'd worked through many different resentments against parents and siblings, and as many of us, I never dealt with resentment against my own child. And that's what I was totally unprepared for. And so I'm sitting there with all these range of emotions going crazy. And I'm trying to figure all this stuff out. And so I make the phone call, right? And I'm ranting and raving. My daughter was the one that I had sold the business to. And now I'm dealing with all this different stuff: anger, frustration, fear, financial insecurity, resentment. So I called my new sponsor up, and he didn't know me as good as the guy did for 27 years, right? I call him up and I'm ranting and raving at Jerry Wills about all the stuff going on. I kept going on over and over and over again and how they screwed me over. And finally, Jerry said, wait a minute. He said, I've listened to you for the past 10 minutes. He said, but I've never heard you mention the word God yet. And my response to my new sponsor was, God ain't got a darn thing to do with what those kids did to us. And Jerry said, well, I like the way you put that. You just immediately threw the blame out there. So Jerry told me, he said, so God doesn't have a thing to do with none of this? I said, no, he ain't got nothing to do with none of this. He said, I'll tell you what, you go find God in this situation and you call me back. And a couple hours later, I called him back. It said, I said, I think I found where God was in this situation. And he said, where's that? I said, I think it was me. I'm the one that played God in that entire situation of the sale of that large business. I set up the lawyers. I set up the financial people. We set the terms of the contract that we would amortize it over 30 years. I made sure that they understood that there was to be no gray area at all. And what that meant was, if you did exactly the way I did when I ran that business, we would all make money, continue to make money. But if you failed, we would all lose money. And I had them under that kind of pressure, even though that they had run the business for 6 years. When you own it, you're under completely different pressure. But see, by now I'd already gone spiritually dark. It really didn't matter what my sponsor was saying. It was all like, want. You see, everything was going right, the sun's shining and all that stuff. God's happy and he's in his place. I'm on cruise control. But when I got caught blindsided, I was not prepared to go into the darkness. And a lot of people with a lot of time do not talk about going into the darkness in sobriety. And it's a dangerous proposition. And I'm here to tell you, I found out the hard way that if you believe in a higher power, you might ought to consider there's a lower power out there, the one doing the push-ups in the parking lot, right? I was unfollowed on Facebook by my own kids. My daughter's wife was saying all this crap on Facebook and my parents were seeing it. I kept going back. It was not familiar for me to be in this kind of darkness. I couldn't figure out what was wrong. You know, God had always been with me before. Now I'm like, whoa, what is up with this stuff going on? I had no idea, right? So I'm wondering why God's not by my side. I'm like, you got to come, you got to find me. And I told Jerry, I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I said, I've lost my conception of God. And Jerry looked at me with, you lost your conception of God. You've got that at 28 years. I think you lost your connection to God. Two totally different things. Connection, conception, right? You have entered the room of darkness and you're groping on the wall. Just like you entered a dark room, you know the light switch is there, you got your hand on the wall, you're feeling up and down, but it ain't there. You can't find it, and you don't know why you can't find it. I don't know what to do. He said, but you remember where it was. And I said, well, that's what it's like to be spiritually dark. And that's why I'm thinking about, you know, when we're talking about the 11th step, because it brings us back into that sunlight. And what happened with me was I was fumbling and groping, and I asked my sponsor, what should I do? Now I'm ready to take certain steps. Once I got to the point where I say, what do? I was no longer relying on my experience. I surrendered. I'm going to rely on I will do anything that you tell me to do. This is my middle child, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, dimpled baby girl. Not only did I lose my relationship with her, but her 3 sons also. And we have 11 grandchildren. At the time we had 10. Now 3 of them are completely dark. They won't have nothing to do with me. So my sponsor asked me this important question. And he said, come on, Chip. He said, I want you to do something for me. I said, what's that? He said, I want you to tell me about your conception of God. I said, whoa, I'm 28 years sober, man. I don't have any problem with it. I got God. Remember, me and God homie. I just don't, you know, he's taking a break. I don't know. He said, no, he said, I need you to tell me about your conception of God. I said, I went to parochial school. I had the nuns, the priests. I got no problem with this God. He said, I didn't ask you about your training, Chip. At 28 years sober, I want you to tell me your conception of God. Tell me about your God. Tell me a story about your God and what he does in your life. And I had no answer. I was so full of rage and anger, I had absolutely no anger, right? Knowing that God is there, but not being able to reach him. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, I couldn't answer him because I was just lost in the darkness. When you're lost in the darkness, how dark it is before the dawn, right? This is the big deal that what he did for me. My sponsor looked at me and he opened up his heart, right? And he says, it took a while, but he says, here's what I want you to do. What happened to all the people that you got sober with in 1987? I said, I don't know. He says, I don't know what happened to all the people I got sober in 1977 was. What happened to them all? And I said, I don't know. He said, do you realize that there could be a dark power out there that just pulls people? They didn't all drink. They didn't all die. They just disappeared. They might have faded away saying, is this all you got? You leave me abandoned with a period of time of sobriety or COVID or whatever excuse it was. He says, when you're ready, you can probably do exactly what I did. And it took me a while. Here for a while, I'm gonna feast on it, and then I'm gonna let it go. But I'm gonna feast on it first, right? So it took a while, but I became ready. I had my parents, they kept asking me, hey, when are you going to forgive them for what they did? And I'm like, when they quit doing the stuff I need to forgive them for, my brothers, my sisters, siblings, cousins, you know, my sponsor said this, Chip, your brain is a muscle. So what we need to do is we need to exercise your muscle. We're going to engage in spiritual exercise, and that's going to give you your spiritual muscle again. So what he did was he asked me to read these books, right? He said, I'm going to ask you to read these 2 books along with our conference approved literature. And I hate reading. And I really hated reading these 2 books. But here's the reason he did it. Because they spoke a different language to me. My sponsor knew because we had been friends for so long. He knew that if he assigned me the regular readings that we normally do, the routine ones that after 28 years I've been reading over and over again, I would continue to get the same result, the darkness. So what he did was he wanted to spark my life up and spark my spirit, kind of jumpstart me or kick me in the butt, however you want to put it. So he had me read these 2 new books that challenged my spirit, right? So I'm like, I don't understand this reading that I'm doing. This is this guy's a 14th century monk. I can't understand the these thous. I quit that when I was an altar boy. He said, continue reading. So I would read it for a couple more weeks and I'd call up and I'd say, hey, sponsor, it's getting a little bit easier. I think the guy eased up on his writing. He said, writing's never changed. I think your ability to consume and understand is starting to change. And I'm like, so I kept doing this spiritual exercise, right? He said, from this very moment, what we're going to do is we are going to practice the presence of God in your life in everything that you do, everything that you see. I want you to identify God in everything that you're walking past, that you're thinking about. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, man. He said, walk up to your Jeep. Thank you, God, for allowing me to have the Jeep. Look at the gecko on the ground going towards the beach. Thank you, God, for the geckos. Thank you for the rain. Thank you. And what he did was he had me do this spiritual exercise. And after a period of time, I could start to feel the switch growing back. It didn't just pop out like a toggle. I could start to feel the ability to reach out and know that it was there and still continue to keep doing what I was doing. After 2 years of doing this with the 11th step over and over, improving my conscious contact, right? Here's what he asked me. He says, one more thing. Are you running on God 8.0? And I'm like, 8.0? He said, yeah, you've had that one God in your sobriety for 28 years now. Are you running on God 8.0? And I said, Jerry, you're a computer guy. I'm a contractor. I don't understand that. That's a computer term, like Windows. He said, nope. He said, darkness, the rest of us upgraded to God 10.0. And I'm like, no kidding. I said, well, you can't do that. I said, you can't upgrade God. He said, I didn't say I upgraded God. We're upgrading your connection to God, the ability to reach out in a different manner and find God when the situation's going on like that. So I said, well, what do I do? He said, we're going to go on another exercise. He said, it's called making amends to your daughter. I'm like, hold on. Make amends to them for what they did? He said, oh, I never said anything about what they did. We're going to make amends to your daughter for your part in that whole situation. And we're going to try to get everything back as far as a relationship the best that we can. And I'm here to tell you that because of the guidance of the sponsor, besides what I thought trying to override him at 30 years sober, I sat on a couch next to my daughter. And I love the way Norm Alpe put it, because I typed up this great big huge amends letter and my sponsor said, email it to me first. And I did. And he called me back. He said, I need you to change that letter. And I'm like, there ain't nothing wrong with that letter. He said, read it with a different set of eyes. That's an angry, angry letter. I said, okay. So I looked at it and I redid it, sent it back to him. He said, I need you to redo it one more time. I said, what, man? He said, I need you to take the 2 words out. I feel. Because I was telling her in that letter, I feel this and I feel that, and I feel like you could have. And I feel like if you gave me a chance, I feel. He said, your daughter can't deal with your feelings. She has her own feelings. So let her deal with hers. And she knows that she has seen you angry. She saw you when you drank. She was 10 years old when you sobered up. She's seen you angry sober. You just need to go ahead and tell her you need to sit down next to her and do these. I called my daughter and she was scared to death. She said, Dad, you can email me the letter. I'm like, I can't do it. I got to sit next to you. My sponsor said so. And at 30 years sober, I sit next to my daughter. And what it was described by Norm Alpe saying, if we took our inventory, we could really sum it up on a 3x5 index card and say we were a liar, cheater, thief, rationalizer, justifier, and a compromiser. And my entire amends, because I had gone through the spiritual exercise of the 11th step over and over and over again, practicing these principles, right? My entire amends to her were the words, I'm sorry. And then I told her what I was sorry about. I was sorry I never should have put my own child in that position of the no gray area. It's either fail or pass, rich or poor, your response. I never should have done that to my own child. I never should have reacted the way I should have reacted. I had a long list of things that I never should have done, and what can I do to make it right? We all sat there snot slinging, crying. But I haven't said the word Al-Anon yet. I want to tell you what got me to the point where I could sit there. Thank you. The point, beautiful Al-Anon, and Angie's got 34 years in Al-Anon now, is she came up to me with all the love and the pain that she went through with this. We both went through this entire financial restructure. And she said, I know that you're still angry. I know that you remember what your daughter did. And here's the question I want to ask you, because she has done the 11th step many times with her girls. She said, are you willing to believe and accept the fact that your relationship with your child will never be the same? And I'm like, what? And she said, it will never be the same. There's no way it can be the same. It's not that it's damaged, it's that it has history. And I said, what do I do? And this is where the magic of Al-Anon and the blending of the programs and being able to have enough respect for somebody to listen to them and accept their experience. She says, your relationship will never be the same, but it can be different. It can be new. I'm like, what? And she said, you can start your relationship with your daughter brand new and have it however you two want it, and never try to bring up the relationship in the past that was damaged. And I did that. And here we are years later, and I was laughing and giggling with my daughter today, calling her back up because she's a hippie and she's living off grid in a little ute type of building a tiny home. Thank you, Cindy. Building a tiny home on a riverfront thing in the woods. And we were laughing and giggling, and I'm asking her if she's burning sage or pot, either one. But I have an amazing relationship with my daughter because I was able to listen to a sponsor. I was able to listen to a spouse with experience in those matters. And I was able to listen to my sponsees. And because I am accountable to my sponsor. Thank you very much, Ali.
Thank you.
Chip, I want to thank you so much for your beautiful message of experience, strength, and hope. I really was engaged in everything that you said. My name is Kelly, and I'm an alcoholic. I forgot to mention that. I do have a question for you. You mentioned the 2 books along with the AA literature that you read. Are you able to give us the titles of?
Yeah, the big book says that we, of course, are allowed and kind of acknowledge the fact that we should find different spiritual books and seek them out. One was The Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence, that 14th century monk. And the other one was by Augmendino, The God Messenger. And it was a memorandum from God. And that was the most powerful thing that I ever read, because he wrote it like God wrote a letter to Chip. And that's how I understood it.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Thank you, Chip. And thanks, Kelly, for the question. Amy, come on in.
Chip, thank you so much. I always get so much from your shares and just you in general. And I appreciate you and Angie and of course your bonus daughter, Mandy. I love Amanda. But to see a family heal in recovery and then we deal with other family members that we love just as dearly, but maybe they don't have the same program we're operating from. I guess my question is like, when you feasted on your anger, your justified anger, because we love to get a hold of some of that and binge eat. And when you talked about Angie saying the relationship might be different and not this new one, can you explain that a little bit? Is it because you're different and you're coming into it differently? Or like that's, I just wanted to say, well, how is the relationship new and different the way Ange was trying to show you it would be?
I sat there and talked to my daughter about it, and I said, if we were to have a new relationship and just leave what happened in the past, not that we leave our lives in the past, but leave what happened in the past, it would start a brand new relationship. How would you want it to be? Let's write it out and define it. Let's get a wish list of what we want our relation to be. All of us remember when the sponsor says, write out what you want. Write out everything in your life that you would love to have, right? And everything that I would like my God to be. And so now I got to say everything in my life that I would like our relationship to be. I mean, she's 46 years old now. And she was 10 years sober, or 10 years old when I sobered up. So now we got to establish this brand new thing and that was 7 years ago when that happened. So we've had 7 years of this brand new type of relationship where we get to laugh and giggle, right? And we both make mistakes, but never, it's like a lot of y'all have heard Angie, we talk about the 7-day rule. And I use that with my daughter a lot. And if you've never heard it, my wife describe it, because it's her up with it. We have a 7-day rule. If I do something that upsets my wife, she has 7 days to bring it to my attention or let it go. If she does something to upset me, I have 7 days to mull about it, to think about it, and then to talk to my sponsor about it, to do any bit of the homework I want. If I don't challenge her or talk to her within 7 days, it's off the table. We are never allowed to go, well, you know what, 2 months ago, blah, 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 and bring back stuff it is done. It is off the table. And we call foul. It's foul. Foul, you can't do that. And that's basically how I restructured that relationship with Elizabeth.
That's beautiful, Chip. I thought you were going to say you had 7 minutes for you to do that.
No.
Calvin, come
Days.
on, brother.
Hello, everyone. My name is Calvin. I'm an alcoholic. And thank you, Chip, for a strong message, man. I heard you. And I also have a daughter, about your daughter's age. She's 48, and oldest daughter. And she didn't talk to me for 5 years. And one day she called me and said, Daddy, I'm in big trouble. I'm suffering from the disease of alcohol. And I 12-step my daughter. And she got in my pocket. I'm like you. I love the literature. I love the program itself of Alcoholics Anonymous. Always have, and so I, took her under my wing, but she got a good sponsor. The sponsor took her through the steps, and she got strong in this program. She's 12 years sober now. And about two or 3 years ago, she stopped talking to me. She became a millionaire, but she stayed in the program. And she stayed strapped in it. But what happened was she went into Reiki. She's a Reiki master, right? Mm-hmm. And so her spirits changed. And I didn't want to lose her. So I started learning about Reiki because I didn't want to lose her. I lost her for 5 years. Anyway, and one day I checked on her. My wife had told me that her business is doing well. One of her businesses is doing well. So I just looked at her and I called her the next day. She said, Daddy, I've been waiting for this call. And she called me about 2 months ago, and she told me to be quiet. I just want to talk to you. And she let me know what I meant to her in her life and what I have done. And I never seen it coming. So sometimes, like you said, sometimes I can just be still and do the next right thing. It just works out. You brought a powerful message, man. I heard you tonight, man.
Thank you, Kelvin.
And it just comes like that. Thank you so much, Chip.
Thank you.
Thank you, Calvin. Marilyn, it's great to see you. Come on in.
Good evening, family. My name is Marilyn. I am alcoholic. And thank you so much, Chip, for just a wonderful, powerful share. Daughter, I started listening even closer because I'm going through a situation. I guess it's daughter day, and I'm going through a situation probably a year into my sobriety. This time my daughter just stopped talking to me because I don't get along with her husband. And she has 3 of my grandchildren, and one of which I'm very, very close to. And I've talked to my sponsor about this. I worked through a fear inventory with my spiritual advisor about this. And, and it's like God has me like being still, right? I haven't got the, I had made an amends to her already. And I don't know where we are in the relationship. She's just not talking to me and not letting me see the grandchildren. And so I don't know what to do, right? So I'm just wondering, during that period of time when you didn't know what to do, what did you do? Before your sponsor kind of guided you to maybe doing the amends process, because I've done that. And I don't know. It's very painful, but I have a powerful God that, daily walks me through the pain, and it doesn't hurt so bad, one day at a time, but I don't know what to do.
Bless you. Because I can remember sitting there and I would be so angry, and my father, the commander, I'd be sitting at that dining room table in there, and my father would, he always, he was number 3 on my resentment list, and we established a beautiful relationship together. And my dad is now upset with me. And he's saying, when are you going to forgive him? You got to forgive him. You are the father. You have to do this. You have to, because that's all he understood. And all I knew was that if I just stayed away long enough, because every time I got close, I would see stuff on Facebook. Even my parents saw this crap on Facebook, but her wife was just blasting us, because what they had done was she has 2 autistic boys, and that's a 28-hour-a-day job. Right now, they're 14 and 12, living off the grid. Oh my God. And so and my daughter's a Reiki master. She's a yoga master. She's a holistic RN nurse. And she spends all of her time trying to cure those boys, and there's nothing I can do to stop her. But all I kept trying to do was I tried to maintain a contact with the boys, and I couldn't do it. The oldest one he's 29 now, living out in Bentonville, Arkansas. But everything stopped. So what my sponsor had me do was, he said, you need to continue. If you can't write your daughter, you need to write those boys. And you need to send them notes and send them they wouldn't answer me. Of course, the autistic ones can't, they're nonverbal. But it got to get out of that pain. I don't care what it costs, God. I'll write the check. I'll do everything that you want me to do, because it hurts. It hurt, and it was, and thank God that I was able to go through that. A lot of us that know each other's lives and know each other's stories know the rest of all the deals that happen like that. When my relationship with my daughter got put back together again, my son died. So it was and he died of a massive heart attack the day after Father's Day, when I was sitting there doing a 12-step with a guy on a picnic bench. And I understand, with this practicing the consciousness of God. And I knew exactly when I got that text and I took that guy home, that I spent 4 hours with that guy. He has severe PTSD. He's an Army Ranger pulling burning bodies out of a helicopter. I don't know anything about PTSD, but I'm a great listener, because that's what my sponsor said. Listen. And I listened to him for 4 hours, and I got off the road, drove down, and I said, oh my God, I forgot to tell you. I got on the phone. I said, thank you so much for my spiritual exercise, because I felt my spiritual muscle grow. 40 seconds later, I got the text, my son died of a massive heart attack. And I knew in that instant, because of what I went through with my daughter and seeing the exact results of how God works when I draw near to him, instead of staying back, going, I'll come when you fix this. I'll write the check, you fix it, I'll come back to you, God. I knew without an instant, I knew exactly why I sat on that bench for 4 hours. It wasn't for me to help JW. It was for JW to prepare me for that text. That is the practice of the presence of God, knowing without a doubt that's a God shot. And he helped me prepare for that. My deal is, can you imagine, the reason I like to talk about being responsible with time? Can you imagine when I went to the beach at 27 years, if I'd have said, the hell with it. I don't need a home group, and I really don't need a sponsor. I'm 27 years sober. Little did I know I was going to go through that ordeal with my daughter. Could you imagine me trying to go through that without a sponsor, without a home group, without a spiritual guide? God had me the whole time, and I'm groping for the switch. You know what I mean? And God's got Marilyn. You just be still and know he's there, and it will happen in his time. I love you, and I feel you. I feel your pain. I love you.
We love you too, Chip. I love you too, Marilyn. Thanks for the question. Marissa, you want to close us out tonight? Thank you.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Marissa Main. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you so much, Chip, for your share this evening. And you just alluded to it in your answer to that previous question, but also throughout your share of drawing near to God, improving your conscious contact, and the sponsorship you mentioned. But are there other practices that you do today to improve that contact, kind of routines that you draw closer outside of that sponsorship relationship?
No, and thank you for that question. What I found out is I can occupy, I'm retiring, listen to Amy, this time it's for good, in 65 days. I'm done. I'll be 70 years old. That'll be my third retirement. I'm done, right? I can occupy 28 hours a day with ritual. I watched people, I did it when I was brand new. I had to occupy my mind. I was journaling everything. If I had a thought, I had to stop everything, go write it down. I had a little notebook I carried around. My sponsor had me do that with my finances because I was so messed up. But I was busy. What I found out was I found a routine, not a ritual, that I'm very comfortable with, but it also includes meetings. So everybody says, I got meeting sponsorship and all that stuff, right? Everybody says, what are you going to do when you retire? I'm going to go to central office and volunteer. I'm going to go to more meetings besides just my home group because I have a construction business and it gets crazy. And I'm going to travel like I do. We go around the world and I add to that, and especially by being with people like you. I have stuff that happened to me when I had a quadruple bypass the day before COVID was claimed a pandemic. And that was a 5th surgery in 12 months. They quarantined me for a year, and I had never heard the word Zoom. You don't think God had my back? I woke in the cardiac unit with my body stapled together on Dilaudid, and they opened a laptop. Why? Because my home group assigned a newcomer to go figure out what the hell Zoom is and get a laptop up to the old timer. You know, there's Beth and Chuck Hartley. Somebody needs to fix this crap. And I woke up and there's my entire home group and I am so loaded. I'm like, I want to share. And they're like, no. You stay muted, buddy. And God had my back the whole time. I understood that because I went through the presence exercise. Oh, that's a God shot. This is a God shot. That's a God shot. That's how my daily routine changes as I recognize everything. I listened to Ali when he talked at our state convention. There wasn't a dry eye in the place because he was so, his expression of gratitude was so extemporaneous. It wasn't like he's reading my expression of gratitude. He reeked of gratitude. All the other speakers, it enhances my spirit. And my spirit is what we're talking about because it keeps me in the sunlight. Thank you, Marissa, for that question.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Chip. Thank you, Marissa. And I'm going to pass it back to my friend Teresa.